Many listeners have also asked us to look into this alternative system, which was co-created by Apple and Google, that was released to more than 20 countries in May, which Australia didn't decide to use. Dr. Ritesh Chugh is a senior lecturer in information systems and analysis at CQ University. G'day, Ritesh.
G'day, Josh.
What do we know about the Australian app and whether it's working?
So firstly, I listened to Chris Bowen as well, and I think I'd like to dispute that slightly. Chris says that 6 million people have downloaded the app, but that makes up about 28% of the Australian population. Because it's not just about the Australian population, we need to actually consider how many people of the Australian population have smartphones. Even if I used a very conservative estimate of 90% of all Australians having a smartphone, that still makes 6.5 million equal to about 28%. For any contact tracing app to work, we realistically need figures of 40%. In fact, that's what the government has been saying all along. But there's recent research that says 40% isn't enough. It should actually be around 60%, Josh. So there's a problem there in the first place itself.
Was that ever a realistic target?
Well, 40%, I believe, is a very realistic target. Although, I do understand that we have older population who might not have a phone, or people who don't have the means. But, there's a lot of people now who are saying, you can get a cheap phone and still be able to use the app. And I'm not saying you need to go and buy a phone just for the app, but, I still promote the fact that the app should be downloaded.
But so can we just address some of people's concerns about the app, Ritesh? Because I want to understand your expert opinion about it. As I understand it, if you have an iPhone and the iPhone is in sleep mode, if it's just off and it's locked in your pocket, then two iPhones, they're not really going to talk to each other 3 times out of 4. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. That's what we've heard initially. But the Digital Transformation Agency said we fixed that digital handshake problem that was happening with iPhones. They haven't released any new data to tell us whether, what the consequence of those digital fixes have been. But in essence, we would hope that a digital handshake is happening through a Bluetooth connection. See, the problem has always been there since inception. There was problem because it's very important for any app to be successful that it wins public's trust. And this definitely hasn't happened. The public, from the start, we've been seeing privacy issues, we've been seeing issues with iOS, we've been seeing issues with backward compatibility. So in other words, people who didn't update to a latest version of the operating system, the app wasn't working. So all of this has created what I call a domino effect. Because, people are not firstly downloading the app, and it doesn't stop there, Josh. Downloading doesn't necessarily help if you don't actually use the app. For example, I've downloaded the app. When I'm at home, it's off. But when I go out, I turn it on. Now, how many times are people actually using the app when they go out is the question, and we don't have any data to corroborate any of those facts.
Ritesh, when you turn the app on, does it keep the phone active, or will the phone, in its normal mode, go back to sleep even after you've activated the app?
No, now it does keep it active.
Right, so while it's in my pocket, it's always going to be alive, it's always going to be essentially seeking out a Bluetooth handshake. So you're requiring people, every time they go out, to actively open the app, leave it on, and endure the hit that's going to take to their battery life for not only their Bluetooth to permanently be on, but also the app to be open and their phone to be live.
Apparently, the battery issues have been fixed. Now, I don't use iOS. I'm an Android user, and I haven't noticed any battery draining issues. But the problem is trust.
Yeah, but I think it's a two-pronged problem, Ritesh, because, if I just interrogate my own attitude towards it, I'm not an inherently distrustful person who goes around thinking that, I need to withhold all of my information from the government, but I'll only do it if I think there's a utility. So there's trust plus usefulness. Is the question of whatever happened to the contact tracing app. Amid all of this, amid the heroic work of the New South Wales Health COVID Operations Manager in piecing things together, in doing detective work, grunt work, trying to figure out who met who went where, who knew what. The missing piece of the jigsaw is the COVIDSafe app, or really any digital or e-solution to the question of being able to identify who was in touch with who and who might have been infected and who do we need to follow up with. We had a terrific chat yesterday with Dr. Ritesh Chugh, who's a senior lecturer in information systems and analysis at CQ University Australia, about just what's going on with contact tracing apps. There are at least 6 million of you who've already downloaded the federal government's COVIDSafe app. He says that's nowhere near enough.
Even if I used a very conservative estimate of 90% of all Australians having a smartphone, that still makes 6.5 million equal to about 28%. For any contact tracing app to work, we realistically need figures of 40%. In fact, that's what the government has been saying all along. But there's recent research that says 40% isn't enough. It should actually be around 60%, Josh. So there's a problem there in the first place. See, the problem has always been there since inception, because it's very important for any app to be successful that it wins public's trust. And this definitely hasn't happened. From the start, we've been seeing privacy issues, we've been seeing issues with iOS, we've been seeing issues with backward compatibility.
And he says that even if you have downloaded the COVIDSafe app, there is a catch.
Downloading doesn't necessarily help if you don't actually use the app. For example, I've downloaded the app. When I'm at home, it's off. But when I go out, I turn it on. Now, how many times are people actually using the app when they go out is the question, and we don't have any data to corroborate any of those facts.
That problem is compounded by the fact that it operates differently depending on whether you've got a phone that uses the Android operating system or whether you've got a phone that uses Apple's operating system. With Apple, you just need the Bluetooth to be on, but apparently you do need to have not closed the app down completely. With Android, it can hum along in the background, but you do still need Bluetooth to be on. So Ritesh was saying that he turns his Bluetooth on when he gets home so he doesn't waste the battery. And then before he leaves, he turns Bluetooth on again, leaves it off in his house. Well, how many people, when you're leaving the house and you grab your keys and your wallet, think, oh, I'm going to take my phone out of my pocket and turn on Bluetooth? We just don't know. A lot of listeners have started wondering about the alternative to the COVIDSafe app, which is the joint development by Apple and Google. The development that Ritesh yesterday branded as Google, Apple, Gapple.
The beauty of Gapple is that all data stays in your phone. This was one of the issues people had. They were saying, well, privacy, COVIDSafe, we lose our privacy, our data goes to the health authority. So the beauty of Gapple is it does not collect or track device location. Data is stored on our phones rather than a centralized server. It does not share user identities with other people. Neither does it share it with Apple or Google because it stays on our phone. And health authorities do not have direct access to that data. When a positive case is picked up by our phone, we then decide to alert the health authority. We also need to consider the fact that when international travel resumes, whenever that happens, the Gapple model will still work. COVIDSafe will only work in Australia.
Yeah, right.
Gapple will work regardless of where you are. The government has to backflip on their apparently $2 million that they've spent on the app. Rather than spending more money, I think it's about making fixes to our COVIDSafe app so it works with the Gapple's exposure notification system, which is already there on our phones.
That's Ritesh Chugh from CQ University Australia. And that really highlights basically the conundrum that the government faces in either doubling down on its COVIDSafe app or transitioning to the Gapple, Google, Apple operating system, which it could base things on. The latter is more reliable, more dependable, works better. But the problem is it doesn't send the information back to the government so that the government can't follow it up and has no idea whether or not people are actually acting on the notifications that they get. And the government has presumably thought, I can't read their mind, but it seems like they've thought we want to have the capacity to be able to trace everybody so that we can follow up and pursue them, and if they haven't gotten a test we can keep badgering them rather than leaving it up to individuals to be responsible enough to go and get a test if they get a notification on their phone, which is what the Google and Apple joint system would do. It would be more effective, but would exclude the government from being able to see what's going on epidemiologically. That's the trade-off. It'll be interesting to see whether or not the government changes its position and embraces the Google-Apple system as one piece of one thing in its arsenal in conducting contact tracing.